also, right?
Okay,
Yes.
so we are going to go ahead and hit record. We are recording as of right now. I'm going to make you guys all co-hosts, and hopefully that'll mean you'll stay up at the top, even if we get tons and tons of people. There we go. Nobody's going to have to be sharing anything. So for some reason, it's not letting me click on Beryl. All right. Well, anyway, I'll make you co-host in just a second, Beryl. You're unclickable at the moment. There we go. Now I can click on you. Okay. Fantastico. So yeah, all the people that didn't make it to Hypnothoughts can join us here instead.
Yes, really. This quite a team.
Yeah.
And Beryl, Beryl and Kryssa, both you know your reputation is all over the place out there on Facebook and the internet. I'm excited, for both of you.
All over the place as far as like propinquity, or all over the place as far as like whether or not we're like, effective therapists, because it can mean two totally different things.
Frankly, both. Not to mention the adventures of your lives on Facebook are really exciting and fun too.
Beryl's definitely got me beat on that count. She's had more adventures all across the entire globe.
Well, of course,
I'm going to catch up one of these days.
Exactly. Great.
Yes. She's a tough act to follow, but she's given me a lot of inspiration to do exactly that. Yes.
And you haven't even heard my Africa stories.
Oh, really? I wish we had time to hear some of those today. I remember some of your Saudi Arabian stories, my Lawrence of Arabia.
There is a spotlight guest host that Beryl did last year, and that's actually on our YouTube channel. And I will put the link for that YouTube channel into the chat bar here in just a little bit, so that anybody who wants to can go and find that. Yeah. I'm going to give everybody maybe like 1 or 2 more minutes. And then if you're in the Facebook group watching this, go ahead and click on that link and come join us. Come join us. That way you can ask questions, you can participate, you can get to know David and Dorothy and Beryl. It'll be a lot of fun. So the more the merrier.
Chris, I'd like to ask you to do a favor, since I don't have my full system up in operation today, and that is, if you could go ahead and put in the chat room my website library. There's a web library, because I'm referring to articles throughout this discussion that are all free. There's no paywall, no problem accessing an entire library. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually already pinned to the very top of the Hypnotherapy Uncensored group, just so everybody has that now.
Thank you.
It's
there's enough.
like 3 things pinned to the top at all times, and that's one of them, David.
Thank you, Kryssa. I'm honored, indeed honored. Yes, good. Absolutely. So just to remind all of you that if you want further information about it, I'm sure we have a whole library about my work, especially with medical conditions.
Great. Okay, so I don't see anybody else coming in. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hi there, welcome. In case you didn't hear me say before, this is being live streamed into the Facebook group. I am also recording this because it's going to go into the YouTube channel for Hypnotherapy Uncensored. I will make sure I post the address for that. But the reason that I'm pointing this out is that if you do not want to be on YouTube, then you might want to turn your camera off, and that's totally fine. We can still hear you if you want to ask questions at some point. For now, however, if you could go ahead and mute yourselves while we get started, that would be fantastic. And so today we've got the one and only David Quigley, the renowned Beryl Comar, and the infamous Dorothy Hodgins Drew, and of course yours truly, Kryssa Marie Bowman, and we're going to be discussing all things medical hypnosis. The format is very casual, roundtable style discussion. I'm just going to ask our mastermind squad here questions that either I've received from our Facebook group members in advance, or that you ask during this call. And all I ask of the panelists is to just be aware of time, so that no one person is monopolizing the conversation. I know we can get overly excited about what we do. And so if I gently nudge us to wrap up on a question, please understand that it's out of respect. I'm not reprimanding you. So on that note, before I ask any questions, would anybody like to just pop a question into the chat box, or you can raise your hand, since there's not a ton of us today, at least not yet. And we can go ahead and get started, because let's see, Beryl's background, aside from medical hypnosis, is also quite a bit with hypnodontics, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And that way, maybe we can start inspiring some questions to come up, and then I'll have David introduce himself. And then Dorothy, you can kind of go over what you already said to Beryl and David earlier before anybody else came on. Take it away, Beryl.
Well, hypnodontics, even amongst hypnotherapists, is pretty misunderstood. When I say to people, I wrote a book on hypnodontics, I work with dentists, etc. And they say, oh, I know about pain. I know about fears of dentists. I'm okay. You are missing the point. There is so much in hypnodontics, you know. I get a lot of referrals on things like TMJ problems, jaw problems, and not a lot of people know that there's no pain gate between your lower jaw and your upper jaw. There are a lot of meridian points around your jaw. Your jaw shrinks as you get older, which means that there's not a lot of room for your tongue, which can cause a lot of sleeping problems, CPAP breathing problems. So TMJ, jaw clicking, teeth grinding, that's just jaw stuff, which also gives headaches. And a lot of people would be doing hypnosis for headaches, but it's not a headache, it's a jaw problem.
Yeah. And I think
know?
you're right. A lot of people in the hypno world assume you're talking only about fear of dentists, when in fact,
That's what I said. It's
so
so
much more.
misunderstood.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
say fear of dentist and pain. It's so much more. So there's TMJ, there's bruxism, there's breathing problems because of the mouth as well. So people who can't breathe while they're in the dental chair, because you know, gagging.
Yeah.
I'm a huge gagger, and even in their training, dentists are told that gagging is often because of sexual abuse as a child, and it's true. I was sexually abused.
Really?
I was a gagger.
Interesting.
There's people who produce too much saliva. We can work with that, or people who prosthetics. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Of course. Yeah.
Teenagers with their braces and things like that. Oral hygiene, you know, the people who don't clean their teeth. In fact, one of the things that I'm moving a lot into working with dementia these days is that as people move through the early stages of dementia, they forget things like oral hygiene.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yes.
So
It sounds like it's a pretty vast field. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for that introduction. And we do have a question for you in just a minute. Let me have David sort of give us a brief overview, because I know you have many decades of experience. So
first of all, I have a
brief
lot
overview,
of
but of specifically of like how it ties into medical hypnosis,
Of
which
course,
is actually
that-
what you suggested that we focus on today. And
Yeah,
so I went with your
absolutely.
suggestion.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've got a dentist appointment this afternoon, so I hope I can learn something about it before I head on over. And I have a lot, especially in that area, because I've had a terrible mouth all my life. But my main specialty is working with chronic illness in two ways. First, accessing the underlying cause of illness in the subconscious mind. You know, we've known for many, many years, for example, that many diseases like cancer have a correlating factor within our experience, traumas, personality factors. And this has been well documented, but has been basically shoved under the rug by the pharmaceutical industry. And you can understand why when you think that a single drug can cost $100,000, which has very little effectiveness on cancer, but very good effectiveness on oncologists' bank accounts. And my work is about helping clients to access the underlying cause of the illness, because frankly, cancer cells are created by your body. And we know doctors have figured out that the immune system builds defenses, not against the cancer, for the cancer. That solid tumors in the body are actually protected by the subconscious mind. And if you want to know why, doctors can't answer it, but hypnosis does. And
thank you for that introduction.
Yeah, well, one more piece. I'll make one more sentence, and that is the other part of my work is accessing the inner healer and working with spiritual surgery to break down the tumors and dissolve them and remove them from the body, which is really, really fun. And I do this, of course, in conjunction with medical procedures and surgeries as well. So that's it, Kryssa. Now, I'm done.
Fantastic. Yeah. I basically just wanted to give people a brief overview of like what you're up to within the realm of medical hypnosis. So thank you for that very much. And Dorothy, I know you also work with cancer and chronic illnesses, and you have a slightly different approach. So I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I got into this field about, I guess, 5-6 years ago when my son, who had cerebral palsy, which just means he had a massive stroke when he was born. So when he was in his 30s, one of his symptoms was his hand was always in a claw shape. And to open his hand took a lot of physiotherapy, a lot of effort, a lot of pain. And in hypnosis, his hand opened up. And the woman would only work on him if I was there because he also has epilepsy. So I saw that and thought, I'm going to learn to do that. So I went into the training planning to work on physical issues. And then, of course, I found anyone with a physical issue, even if it's been a car accident, has a lot of emotional pain that's holding on to whatever's going on. And so very quickly, it was a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of massive abuse, and that was all connected. And so I got into that. I've taken a course in hypnosis and cancer. I'm really thrilled when I can help somebody, and I do the gamut from helping people with their golf game, which often, often is a physical issue that's holding them back, to the cancer. So,
well, thank you, Dorothy. All right, fantastic. So, Beryl, we do have a question for you. You ready? All right.
Okay.
Have you seen jawbone regeneration occur through hypnosis?
Absolutely. Yes. And one of them was a referral from Scott Sandland, actually, at Hypnothoughts once took, and it was somebody I worked with in Vegas. And this person had necrosis of the jaw. That means the jaw was dying. Okay. So it's a 3-hour session. It was a long session because I didn't have an awful lot of time to give this person, So I got a one-off chance. And I did a regression to cause. Again, like David, find the cause, because you weren't born with that.
That's what Dorothy does too. So all three of you do regression work. Yeah.
And the interesting thing was, she was born in East Africa. And I think I told you I lived in East Africa, and had left as a small child. And it was her grandmother telling her that she had a dirty mouth. You have a dirty mouth, because she'd learned some swear words, and what Allah was going to do, and etc. to her because of this dirty mouth. Okay. And anyway, so I said I wanted to speak to grandmother. Oh, she can't speak to you because she only speaks Swahili. So I spoke Swahili to grandmother.
You're like, let me just pull this out of my sleeve.
Not that I'm fluent, but enough to talk to a granny about what she's saying to her little girl, etc., etc. And did she realize this was going to be a result? And is this what she wants, etc., etc.? No. So then, we had grandmother then doing some chair therapy with the client with the grandmother. I'm an intermediary here, and
when you say grandmother, was she physically there, or were you talking to the part of the grandmother within the client?
Yeah.
Okay. The part. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that for anybody watching on the YouTube
I don't know
that
what,
are like,
some people call it channeling. I don't care, so long as it happens. There's a lot of theory to these things. So and another thing was that she was wanting to that's another thing that I do and people don't realize that there's a lot of bacteria in our mouth, and you can have the cleanest diet in the world, you can grow your own vegetables, blah blah blah, but if you've got any toxins in your gums, in your mouth, you're swallowing that. So you might as well have two McDonald's a day, honestly. You got to look after that oral health, and it's so close to your brain health. I mean, it's anyway. So what would you want to tell her now? How can she look after herself? I make those promises. And also she'd been very worried and she about fertility. So we did a bit of fertility thing. She was allowed to have a child now. Yeah, she got, within months, she was pregnant and her bone health is okay.
It regrew. That's amazing. Yeah, that's
Wow.
incredible. Thank you.
I've specialized in musculoskeletal conditions myself, and have worked a lot with rebuilding bones in the body. And I've had some pretty remarkable success with that. And a lot of times what it does is you actually have to visualize or imagine that the inner healer is rebuilding the body according to an X-ray that you can see, or if you will, an MRI screen you can see in front of you. I call it blueprint technology. We're going to rebuild it exactly the way it was built before. Robert Otto, the president of the the Society of Medical and Dental Hypnosis, and a wonderful man, Robert Otto, had to rebuild his entire face because the right side of his face was utterly destroyed in a motorcycle accident. His eye was literally hanging off of the shattered remains of his cheek. And he rebuilt the entire right side of his face so completely. Robert Otto did this. Yeah. Using the techniques, by the way, that I teach, the somatic healing techniques, he was able to rebuild his face so completely that he went into the doctor's appointment a year after the accident. And the doctor said, I know you look like the Robert Otto in this picture, but you cannot be him because you look completely normal. And he can't the Robert Otto in this file can't look like that. Beryl can't look like that. He had rebuilt the right side of his face to be completely identical to the left, using the concept of the blueprint technology to rebuild the facial structure. So yeah, I love, yes, your story is not only true, Beryl, but I've got my own. And it's incredible what we're doing.
Still the inner healer, going back to that child and erasing, well, not erasing what grandmother said, but have her inner wisdom come in and retake her body to that child who then did grow some teeth and did have a healthy mouth until this, and it was this thought of now being a mother, and I'm not going to be a mother like my grandmother. You know how
happen. Yes, what a beautiful story about the underlying cause. That was gorgeous, just gorgeous. And of course, wasn't important to my friend Robert Otto because he was just rebuilding a motorcycle accident. But in most cases, there is that emotional factor, and the fact that you were able to go back to that young child and give her that new message. In my opinion, this activates stem cells, which we have at all ages in our body. But the younger we are, the more stem cells we have. So, Beryl, my theory is that when we go back to that little girl and rescue her from that situation, we're actually activating the stem cells in her jaw to say, clean jaw, clean mouth.
Beautiful.
Right.
Yeah,
so thank you for sharing that story.
Act like youthful cells again. Yeah.
And the thing is, if it had been anybody else in America at that time, who amongst the hypnotherapists speaks Swahili? Would grandmother have spoken to anybody else? I had to get into rapport with grandmother.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Incredible. They found you for that very reason. You know, I feel like they were led to you, and vice versa. I would love to ask Dorothy if she's ever had any situations of cellular regrowth of, you know, any sort. It doesn't necessarily have to be the jaw, the mouth, or whatever, but anything that you've found among your clients, or anything else you might want to discuss along regeneration.
I had a client who was in her late 30s. She'd had anorexia since she was in her early 20s. She'd starved herself and gone into osteoporosis, and yet she wanted to have a baby. She hadn't had a period in well over 15 years. Her bones were very fragile, but she wanted a baby, and they couldn't do artificial anything because she wasn't even ovulating. There was nothing in her ovaries. So I had her go back, and it turned out the root cause was she was in a gymnastics accident when she was around 17. And it took several times to come up to the reason, but during that time, she was given morphine. And one of the effects of morphine in a lot of people is it causes you to retain water. So within a few weeks, she had become quite large, and she'd been a gymnast, and here she was confined to bed, and she saw herself as having gotten so fat. So she stopped eating because she was fat, not understanding it was the drug, that it was water. And she starved herself into basically into menopause, into stopping it. And so I did a whole lot on her ovary being able to be productive, that she could produce it. And within 2 weeks, she had the first period that she'd had in well over 15 years, which meant they could at least begin the idea of doing artificial insemination. And then just before she went in for the artificial insemination, she became pregnant. And
Fantastic. Beautiful work.
it was just very exciting. It was a high-risk pregnancy because her bones are so fragile. And but after hearing what you just said, Beryl, I'm going to go back to her and say, let's make your bones strong again. But yeah, but she was able to have her baby, and she was thrilled. She was happy, and she but just that, even after that many years of not having menstruation, not having ovulation, hypnosis could bring her body to that place.
Yeah, I do a lot of fertility work, and gynaes send them to me. Yeah, give talks to gynecologists, obstetricians, and they will send people.
Yes.
I was just looking through, because I used to have these saved. I'll post them in the group again, in the Hypnotherapy Uncensored Facebook group. But I actually have a bunch of articles saved on different applications for medical hypnosis. And some of these are peer reviewed. They're from Harvard, they're from the NCIA, they're from, different institutions where they're peer reviewed. They're doing a meta-analysis on all of the various, like years worth of cumulative information and research that we have on how we can actually help bones knit back together and have that cellular regeneration, and all through hypnosis. And it's whatever direction we're coming at it, as far as like our background in hypnosis, I feel like it's a vast, very juicy subject that we can all get involved with. Every single person who owns one of these, physical bodies is going to at some point need a little help. So I don't think that there's really any end to just the creativity and the toolkit that you can bring to each person. I would like to ask, starting with Beryl, what is the most interesting or unique or unexpected result that you have encountered from a client, one of your clients, like after your session with them? Or maybe during, but like that it's, not just a wow factor.
I had a schizophrenic client, and it was actually her psychiatrist who brought her in to see me. And this was way, 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 way back. I was the only person doing hypnotherapy or anything like this. In fact, I was still working at university. I was just seeing people at weekends. And my husband was a doctor, by the way, so that's why I got a lot of referrals.
Right.
And she had been the only psychiatrists in UA at the time were men, and she had 7 personalities, and one of them was a flirty girl. So she ended up trying to seduce these guys, but didn't really want to seduce them. I mean, she was a Muslim woman. She was from the Levant, where they wear more of a coat and a scarf rather than the black of the UAE. So he sat in on the first session, just wanted to check me out, I guess, and just saw she was in great hands. And the reason it had come to a big point was that she was driving her car into walls. Just driving her car into walls, saying that she didn't know what was happening. She was, so everybody thought she was suicidal, there's something wrong with, but no, she wasn't suicidal. Why? Anyway, regression to cause, she was and parts therapy mostly, and she was sexually abused by her brother. Now, she had 3 children, and she was a teacher. So in the summer, the husband would get the car and they would drive from UAE through Saudi to the Levant. The Levant includes Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, that along the coast of, yeah. And because it was so expensive for so big a family to fly, okay. And then he would have a week's holiday, drive back. It's like 2 days driving. Then drive back at the end of the summer holiday, 2 months later, collect the family, bring them back. Now, her mind was wanting to protect her, but which part? So driving, if I drive into the wall, I destroy the car, or, you know, there'll be lots of reasons. It wasn't about her. Her children were getting to an age where she couldn't watch them all the time, and she knew her brother was there, and she'd never said anything. And a Muslim family, you know, anyway. So anyway, at one point, and there was a killer. There was a part called Killer. The part Killer
among her personalities, that was part of the system.
And whenever Killer came out, all the others would hide wherever they could. And there was a little girl called Susie who just wanted to play because she had a childhood. Anyway, while I was talking, I called out Killer one day. I thought it's fine now, you know, to call out Killer. And she's in hypnosis, a little bit back, and I always sit at a chair a little bit more higher than them. Suddenly, her eyes are closed, and her hand came like this to my throat.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
That would be pretty yeah.
I have, guys, get impressed. I have thunder thighs. I believe in my thighs, okay? So I know my thighs can get me out of that chair quick. She's got it, and it's tight. And I know I had my hands on her hand, just lightly on the top. So I could, if necessary, up and pull down with my hands, okay? So, and I said, oh, I'm just curious what you want to do now. I'm Killer. I kill. I said, well, you know, you haven't killed anybody so far, have you? No, because and anyway, he came back to I'm going to try and kill you. That was the key word, the try. I said, okay, if your job is to try to kill and you're dominating everybody, try and kill me now. Go on, try and kill me now. No, I could get out on it.
That operative word, try.
She rolled into tears. She cried non-stop. I'm not telling you, for 20 minutes. Oh, I was able to. Afterwards, I went back. Where's Killer? Killer had gone.
And for those who don't know,
I talked to Susie, the little girl, and all the creatures that could come out now, and they could be part of this lady who's a teacher, can look after them, take care, can they trust, can you make a whole, etc., etc. You know, that person is now a very, very good hypnotherapist.
That's fantastic. And for those who are new, I would love to ask you to go ahead and just briefly share why that word try was so operative in this whole thing in helping to release or
you know how in the end when you try and open your eyes, and the more you try to open your eyes, more relaxed you become. Try is a negative, you see, and the body knows if you're only trying to do something, you don't achieve it.
Yep. Thank you. Just in case, you know, because we do have some people that are brand new to all this and they might not already.
If it wasn't covered in the course, ask.
Yes, absolutely.
What was going on?
So David, I have a question for you, David.
Yeah.
Would stem cell activation help with cancer?
Well, there's actually a complex answer to that, because first of all, with cancer, we're not talking about activating and building, but rather, frankly, demolishing, destroying hyperactive cells. You might say that the cancer cell is a deformed cell, which has become a stem cell, rapidly reproducing itself with obviously oblivious to the body's needs. So our goal, therefore, is not to activate the cells, but to destroy them. And one of the reasons why we can do this is once we have cleared the underlying subconscious motivation for building the tumor, the next step is to activate T cells. T cells are the ways that we destroy the cancer. And it's not stem cells. Stem cells, what I use, for example, for rebuild, like when we rebuilt Robert Otto's face and his jaw, that was stem cell activation because you're rebuilding from basically nothing. And I've done that with emphysema and other kinds of diseases where we have to build internal organs. But in this case, we have to destroy. And the T cells are the solution. They're actually a cell that your body specifically designed for eliminating cancer cells. What we need to do, however, is make sure that the T cells are properly tuned to the cancer cells so they know exactly which ones to destroy. And we also need to eliminate the body's natural tendency to block and protect the cancer from the T cells, which is done through the underlying cause work we just discussed. Mm-hmm. So once those barriers are down, then we can actually utilize the violet color is one of the powerful colors this because it's non-inflammatory, but antimicrobial. We can use the violet color and also the pink of activation of the immune system to bring the inner healer's energy into the area of the tumor. And the inner healer will actually rub the area of the tumor with this either pink or violet. There may be different colors, but in that color, we are activating the T cells, which are like, I like to picture them like little T-34 tanks in World War II, but because they have a big gun, that was the big thing about the T-34. It had the best gun in World War II. And these T-34s are these T cells, which stands for thymus. They shoot that gun into this huge, because they are very large cancer cells, and then all the fluid drains out and the cancer cell is destroyed. So stem cell activation, however, would be necessary only when we need to rebuild tissue that has been destroyed within the process of cancer. Many of you notice that, for example, a cancerous tumor doesn't always look like a lump, but often looks like a sort of a sphincter. It's with the tissue is actually being destroyed by and eaten by the cancer cell. Mm-hmm. In that case, you see there's real tissue damage then, as well as, of course, the tissue that's damaged during surgical procedures mm-hmm. that needs to be rebuilt. There is where we activate the stem cells. Now, whether we can, for example, rebuild a 34C breast out of an empty shell, I haven't been able to accomplish that yet, but we can certainly utilize this work to reshape and rebuild both fatty tissue, bones, internal organs. Rebuilding these is possible. Beautiful. Through activating the stem cells. And that would be on the other side of destroying the cancer cells. I had something very similar in my own healing when I had to heal myself of rheumatoid arthritis. The key was, of course, I had to empty out and first of all, stop the arthritic inflammation. That's got to go first. Just like first, stop the bleeding is a good policy in emergency medicine. Likewise, with arthritis, you stop the inflammation. Then secondly, you need to dissolve the calcium deposits, and that is actually done through some very specific methods. They're not about stem cells, but then once you got that done, then you rebuild the stem cells in order to rebuild the damaged joint. Mm-hmm. And that's how I went from a wheelchair to being a martial artist in 72. Well, not a good martial artist, by the way, and I was a terrible wheelchair victim. But nevertheless, that's how we make that transition.
Well, don't let being bad at something stop you from doing it.
Amen. Amen there, Kryssa. Well done.
I think we all have the right to make a fool out of ourselves anytime we want. We don't have to be good at everything we do. Right?
Kryssa, that is so
I'm glad that you're enjoying not being in a wheelchair and that you are enjoying being a mediocre martial artist.
A mediocre martial artist. I'll remember that.
Hey, at 72, I think mediocre martial artist is probably pretty darn good.
That's pretty darn good. Yeah, exactly.
So do we have any other questions that you guys would like to ask? I see that we do have, there's several people that are not on camera, but if you want to just pop your hand up, we can go ahead and just have you unmute yourself.
Hi, Kryssa. You know, this is an area of interest to me. And in fact, I studied with Beryl, and you'll be pleased to know that I had a very nice bruxism case came by me by surprise, and she's well. But I am curious how we learn this for ourselves and for others. And, you know, I have some little starts on that, but I'm curious how any recommendations you might make for how to become adept and more adept and practicing and so on?
Well, I have a specific class called somatic healing, which is a 3-day class that they can take anyone who has any background in healing arts, counseling, therapy, and become a medical hypnosis practitioner. I call it somatic healing because it's a very specific type, and you can look that up on our website.
Were you asking anyone in particular, Grace?
Well, I'd like to ask everyone. I would like to ask Beryl and Dorothy, and I'm not sure if we have a fourth speaker. I'd like to if I may, hear thoughts from everyone.
Right.
Yeah,
My
Dorothy.
suggestion is you get in and you practice and get as many people as you can. And when I was first starting, one of the things I used to do is I would go to a person I knew who lived in a geared to income house and an apartment building where most of the people had all kinds of issues. And it would be just like an open house. I'd get people come in. I'd have no idea what they were coming in with or what was going on. And I went about a year ago, I was called in. There was a woman who had been trafficked as a teenager, and she was in her early 20s, and she'd been with a guy who'd beat her up. So I went in to see her. I mean, she had a black eye, she had all kinds of physical issues, but it was this, what happened when she was trafficked and what to do with it. And one of the things I had her do was imagine. So I thought we'd do it, we'd get the worst case, and she could, face them, she could yell at them, she could, get rid of them. And she adapted it. So, I mean, you learn from your clients just by working with as many clients as you can. So she brought all the men who had ever abused her, and she had them in some kind of a room, and they were under a spotlight, and she yelled at them, and she was derogatory, and she sort of, and then she had the police escort them out of the room into prison. And I know she looked years younger. She was only in her early 20s, but she had looked like she was ancient, and she looked young, she looked happy. And even though she still had her black eyes, she still her face was shining. She'd gotten rid of but she got them all rid of them all at once. So I was only with her like for 45 minutes, and she got rid of all of this trauma from the trafficking. And it was she that did it. I had no so you listen to the clients. So the more you can be with people who need you. I know some of my colleagues have gone to work at a women's shelter, and just go in on one afternoon a month and just tell everyone who wants to see a hypnotist to have release from pain, and just that experience. But you learn so much from every client you work with. And
I'd like to respond to what I hear and then ask more and any more from any of you, in particular to hear from the first place from Beryl. So what I hear when you say just go in, so I'm thinking what I hear is, one, there's looking at cause and doing that exploration, and then the other is the suggestions towards healing. And I'm assuming, because I hear David's got a class and you're saying just go in, and kind of all of the above, it sounds like. Is that so? If we go in and we attend like those two sides, Dorothy, does that kind of comprise what you're talking about going in with and doing? Does that make sense?
Every client you ever work with, you're going to learn something from them. So what I was doing, this was before COVID. If I went to the battered women's, place, these are women who have been traumatized, usually by someone they know, by a family member, and you go in there and just say, think of the Charlie Brown cartoon the doctor is in. Well, the hypnotist is here, because where I live, I can't call myself a hypnotherapist, so I'm the hypnotist, and I would go in and it began with people would just come and say, I'm in this pain. So, I mean, I'd be, I'd have 5, 6, 7 women in front of me, and they all had bruises and and it was just what you do with them. So, it doesn't matter why it happened. It's the immediate need for getting rid of pain so that they can sleep, so that they can feel at peace. And then if you go back, then you give them cases where they let go of the emotional connection to whoever's hurt them, so that you know, you want them to get eventually to a place where if they've been beaten by somebody, you want them to be able to get to a place where that emotional connection is severed. And there's many ways of doing it, you know, imagining they've got big scissors and they're cutting it down and all this kind of stuff. And then you focus on, you know, the immediate physical issues, but it's also, you want them to be able to say, you know, he did this to me, he did that to me, and it's just as if they're saying the grass is green, the sky's blue. So if you can sever that emotional hurt, that pain, they can heal, they can move forward, they can let go.
There's levels of triage, it sounds like both David and you are talking about, where you have to address whatever that immediate presenting thing is that's keeping them from living their lives functionally. And then after that, going in and being able to start putting the pieces back together. It sounds like.
Well,
Beryl, I would really love to hear from you.
Dorothy said, I didn't do the work, she did the work. And that's the thing, is we're kind of connecting dots here. And we ask, is this what needs to be done at that? They tell you, they know.
They do,
So
they do.
It's not like, oh, have I got a script for this? It's like, ask, if in doubt, you ask.
It's
Like,
the opportunity to them.
What's your job? What are you doing for her? When did you come? What have you been trying to do? Established with the partners, only trying to do this. And until you destroy it, and then you build it up again. Another.
Yeah.
And I love working with the multidimensional aspects of consciousness for this, because from one day to the next, the same exact person with the same exact issues might come presenting with a different immediate thing that they need to deal with. So they might have rheumatoid arthritis, right? A chronic issue. But one day it might be manifesting in a way that's causing greater emotional pain. Another day it might be greater physical pain. Another day it might be something else, right? And so you have to deal with them where they're at in order to get that. I just find if you're working with a person's highest or higher levels of consciousness as well as their subconscious, then you can't go wrong. You kind of can't, because they already know what's happening within them.
That makes sense too, because when people tend to things, you know, there's multiple causes, you know, something happened and then they're more susceptible, and then something else happens and then it's got 2 dimensions and so on. Exactly. So all these pieces are wonderful to hear.
And sometimes we need to actually do physical pain control before we can do clearing of the underlying cause. Some of those, they're in such pain. Even, for example, I remember I was riding with a driver to visit a castle in England. I was so excited about visiting. She thought I was a past life regression expert, but we wound up getting rear-ended on the M17, the route, the thing around London, and she had an instant whiplash injury right then and there, and she was in agony of pain. And so what I did was I had her go into trance, and we relived the accident. We healed it. Within 10 minutes, she was perfectly normal. She couldn't believe it, because had suffered a whiplash injury 2 years before and left her crippled for over a year. This time, same injury. We finished with it in 10 minutes. By the time the police arrived to take the report, she was pain-free. Sometimes
just
we have
like
to do
Beryl's serendipitous situation with her Swahili speaking
exactly.
grandma.
I thought you were asking.
I feel like that woman was on that highway having that experience because you were there. You know?
Just like you were asking, what was the big moment?
That's just me and my little woo-woo, but you know.
I love
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So sometimes you have, for example, a client comes in, and I've had a client, she had a tumor the size of an egg in her breast. And the first thing we did was we demonstrated the power of her inner healer, who was her Jewish grandmother, who washed it with chicken soup. And by the end of 2 days of my somatic healing class, it had already shrunk by over 50% in diameter, which means shrinking about 3/4 in area. And that creates the convincer for many of my clients, that then it gives them the encouragement to go down into those emotional underlying causes. I mean, who wants to go through all that screaming, kicking, and crying, Dorothy? But if they've already experienced some healing on that tumor, Dorothy, and then they say, okay, Dorothy, I'm ready now to do some kicking and screaming here. Say, yeah. So I think that combination, knowing when to use the physical healing, what I call somatic healing, which means healing of the body, and when to use the underlying emotional stuff, which you guys have described so beautifully. This is the real skill as a hypnotist, to know when to use which.
Yeah,
I don't find them to be differentiated. Go ahead, Beryl.
Says she doesn't call herself a hypnotherapist because it's not allowed. She calls herself a hypnotist. I don't even call myself that. I call myself an emotional intelligence development specialist, because I'm helping you to develop your emotional intelligence. Because when you're more emotionally intelligent, aware of your emotions, aware of what's going on, you can manage it. In other words, you can't manage what you don't acknowledge. So as an emotional intelligence development specialist, I use many tools: hypnosis, NLP, transactional analysis, somatic healing. I've done your class, David. Ultra height, EFT. We'll often start gently with some EFT. I might have a whole group, as Dorothy said, of the there was a place, a rescue center for women in Dubai, and I would go there and we just have a whole group and we'd all just do EFT, and some spoke only Arabic, some English, some Urdu or whatever, but the intention is there, and they'd all help each other, and they can just hum along. I can be saying it in English or in Arabic and they'd all be humming along because the intention is there, and the energy was so powerful. And they just drop into hypnosis anyway. Or you just go
so true.
And then, well, it's like a mantra. And most of them were Muslims, so they go into trance and just they sleep, and off they'd be in, and to just be pain-free, emotionally pain-free for a while was like, yes, I want to see her on my own. I want to work with her.
Well, then you've also got the added power of it being in a group setting. So each person's energy is ricocheting off of each other's and building and building. So
it's called borrowing the benefits.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And what
I
Beryl
like that.
said, for a while, even just to give that opening, if we don't say it's forever, but that for a while to have that experience and feel the space. That for a while can be so powerful. Like try is not powerful. For a while, it can be amazingly powerful.
Oh, the phrase "for a while." Is that what you mean?
So the expectation for a while to just have this experience, to let something else happen. It's an opening. And I forget which NLP person says you never know how far whatever it is going to go. That for a while can just be the door can open wider and wider.
Absolutely. I use that, and well, not that one specifically, but I use sooner or later. Like we know that sooner or later this is going to happen anyway. So we might as well go ahead and just start now. And who knows when sooner or later is. Agnes had said, and thank you so much, Grace, for that lovely question that everybody was able to respond. And sorry, Beryl, I think there was a bit of a lag there for a minute. I didn't realize that we were both talking at the same time for a few seconds. I wasn't trying to interrupt or talk over you. I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm all the way from Spain.
Yeah, there was just like a brief lag and I was like, oh, wait, I think we're both talking. So sorry about that. I bow out gracefully. I would much rather hear from you. Agnes says, I've been a hypnotist since 2012, although practice sporadically. I am fascinated by this class. I continue to struggle using hypnosis for self-care. Is there a suggestion on where to start dealing with life-altering issues, etc.? There's the reason I'm stopping that question there is because the previous question was also about healing yourself. And so I would really like to, let's go Beryl and then David and then Dorothy this time. We'll go the opposite direction. Beryl, if you could touch upon self-healing for medical issues for a moment.
Okay, well, yeah. In 2000, I broke my arm, had a dislocation, but it wasn't diagnosed as such. They said, oh, it's just you bruised it or something. And that's the year, David, when I turned up at the National Guild with a bit of pink thing around my neck.
Yes.
But it was, I didn't know until I got back a month later, because I did some traveling, that I'd had a dislocation, 2 fractures. By which time and this is the danger of using hypnosis when you are in pain, because when I presented, they missed it because I didn't. Are you sure it feels like it's broken? And they're looking at me thinking, how can it? Because I was in self-hypnosis, So my arm was then not straight, and it had started to heal the break. Because I kept saying, you're healing, you're just a bruise, you'll be fine, Anyway, what they had to do then was go in, because there was a piece of bone loose and it was clicking, etc., etc. But while they're doing that surgery, the doctor severed the radial nerve by mistake. Yeah, and I knew it as soon as I opened my eyes, severed the nerve. The doctor didn't even come to the room. No, they would know if they cut the nerve, there would be a lot of blood, he can't have cut the nerve, etc., etc. Even my husband, a doctor, said, he couldn't have cut the nerve, Beryl, everybody would know. It's, you know, they left me for 5 months with a severed radial nerve. And nerve disintegrates at 1/2 inch a month. So I finally found some, and I couldn't get the messages there because it goes through nerve. I couldn't get the messages. I couldn't get the message. I knew I knew what had happened. I didn't like myself at that time because I was so horribly, I know what it is. I know what it is. And going to neurologist, and I finally found a surgeon who said, yeah, he would go in and have a look. So he did. And then while I was in, it was 11-hour surgery, they took the nerve from my leg, made a bundle, put them in and put it in my arm. Yeah. So now I was with my leg in plaster in my arm. And when I did see a doctor, they said it was so bad and, you know, you'll probably never write again. Because I'm right-handed. And I remember now the sound of the chair as I stood up and the chair fell backwards. Don't you fucking say that to somebody. You never write again. I will write a book again, and I will write a book. Fuck you. And the nurse put a hand on his shoulder. You can't speak like that to a doctor. And he was in such shock. He says, you're right. I want you to write again. I want you to write again. Come back. Show me your book. I had to change his, and I did.
You
I mean,
taught
okay,
him something very valuable that day.
Because I still have, the wrist is just floppy like this, okay? But I've got, it's funny what you say about writing. I've got these two, nobody knows how I can do it. I've got these 2 fingers to it, which means I can hold a pen and I can write.
Oh my gosh. Well,
you know,
what a story.
It all starts with belief. And if you look at the word beliefs, what is the 3-letter word in the middle of beliefs?
Lie.
Lie. Whatever lie you tell yourself, positive or negative, it will work for you. You know? Okay, I'm 74, but I tell myself I'm 39. And that's it. You know? Okay, people say, oh, it doesn't work, still wearing this. Yeah, I've had problems with
But
the
you
wrist,
can write.
on the fingers.
That you can write. You can write.
Yeah.
That's that is the miracle right there.
Imagine if I'd said to myself, you know, I'm going to punch out the lights of Muhammad Ali or something with this hand, you know, everything's going to function.
That would have been a completely different goal, but yeah.
Completely.
To have belief, get rid of the lies. That's why, I like tapping, because you're tapping on even things like, even though I don't love and accept myself, I choose to love and accept myself. I'm fine. You know,
let me, before our time is up,
David,
let me answer that in my own way. Beryl, that was beautiful, by the way, very inspiring and so true of medical hypnosis. And let me say that my own self-care is very important to me. I'm 72 myself and have had many, many health problems myself over the years. But I would say the most important single factor for me is hanging on to my inner healer. That is, I like to call her my 10-foot guardian angel, who Michaela is her name. And when I get into any kind of medical condition or trouble, she is right there to perform miraculous healings. I mean, I broke my foot when I was took a bad leap out in the woods a couple of years ago, and she repaired it within 15 minutes. I could walk out with only a small limp. And although it took me a month for the bone to actually heal, so I had to postpone my dance routine for a month, but I was able to walk easily during that whole month because the inner healer was there to perform the work I needed on my body. So I think that while we can talk about self-care, I like to think in terms of going for the inner healer, and that inspires us to write again. For example, I'm sure that was your inner healer that said, I will write again. And when we can access that power, you see, when we look into another's eyes and feel another's presence with us and for us, that's, in my opinion, where healing occurs. And so when I experience self-care, it's because I have my inner healer with me, because I don't have to do it myself, but I have her, like Beryl's inner healer, to stand.
Oh, you're muted, David. Still can't hear you.
Oh gosh, I
There
have
we
just
go.
somebody
Okay.
trying to come in to get. Okay, good. Well, anyway, I would be. I probably have a overdue electric bill. It looks like, but in any case, I just want to say thank you for that beautiful story, Beryl, and I'm really hope that all of you will have the opportunity to learn to work with that inner healer because it
Yep.
for self
And I, with your permission, as you know, have brought that concept of the inner healer into Quantum
Please.
Journeys hypnosis as well. We approach it differently because in my experience, it's not always the same inner healer. There's often different ones for different.
Oh, and my experience also.
times.
Yep.
Okay.
Very different. Yep.
But Dorothy, I would love to put this to you. And then I have a really brief little story about some self hypnosis that I've done for healing as well. So.
Okay. There was one time I had to have a tooth pulled and there was some warnings. So I prepared a little recording for myself. I thanked the tooth. The tooth has been good to me. I released the tooth. I let the tooth go. And the doctor had warned me because it was a front tooth, he expected the root to come off somehow. He expected to have to dig in. He expected it to be major. And the whole tooth came out. And what shocked him was not just that the roots came out, but there was this little black gunky thing of infection came out right with the tooth. I released that. And then
That's
so
fantastic.
it was like I didn't even finish the whole recording before he was all finished, and he was expecting it to be like an hour. And then the next time he had a tooth that he wanted to pull, I just said, give me a couple of months. So I spent a couple of months with some very intense recordings for myself about the infection leaving, that everything's and I didn't have to have the tooth taken out.
That's
So.
beautiful. Love
What
that.
I love, Dorothy, about that is creating your own individualized script
Mhm.
and either reading it to yourself or even better, have enough imagery in it that you can experience it as a dream that you weave for yourself every night.
Mhm.
Because
That's
reading is
lovely.
not as powerful as just imagining, here I am chewing
Yeah.
with that tooth. Here it is
Well, and
being
it's
pulled out with all the debris. Oh, perfect.
yeah.
Dorothy.
It's the audio is so much more powerful than
Yes.
reading.
Yes. I don't, that's why I don't recommend the read, but listening, if you can record it and then journey with it, that's what works,
Yeah.
Dorothy.
Long before I'd
Anyway.
ever taken your somatic healing class, or I took a couple classes from you, David, but before all of that, back when I was just getting started with hypnotherapy, I had an upcoming surgery and I've had a lifelong bleeding disorder, a factor 7 deficiency. And so every time I have any kind of surgery, they have to give me a coagulant so that I don't hemorrhage. But the side effects of the coagulant are horrendous on the best of days. But when you're in your late 40s, then they have to watch out for thrombosis, aneurysm, stroke, things.
Oh.
So I was like, that's it. I'm gonna just put everything I have into healing this. And I did exactly what you said. I created a bespoke audio just for me. And I've had this for my whole life, right? So I know the verbiage and, all the stuff. And it was about 20 minutes long. I listened to it every single night as I was falling asleep. And then I went and had my full blood assay, and my hematologist was like, well, I don't know what happened. We need to postpone your surgery. And I thought, oh no, it went like the opposite direction. Like I made myself worse. And she said, no, everything's within the range of normal. I've never seen that happen. So we need to do it again. And we need to send it off to the Mayo Clinic to get a second opinion, because I don't something's off. Our machinery, I don't know what it is. So I was like, so now I have to rearrange my life to have this surgery again. So I went in, and this time they did the full panel, not just of the few clotting factors around my factor 7 plus that, but they did everything, and platelets and everything. And it all came back within the realm of normal, except for the platelets were a little off, but not by too much. And she's like, well, I just don't know how to explain this. And I was like, I've already told you how I did it. She was like, well, that explanation doesn't work for me. People can't just hypnotize them out of a lifelong bleeding disorder. And I was like, apparently I can, and I'm people, so I would beg to differ. But yeah, I've had it my whole life, and I don't have it anymore. And I still don't have it anymore. And I used to bruise like crazy, and I would get petechiae, like to the point where I couldn't even wear shorts because it looked like I had leprosy or something on my legs. Petechiae is just, looks like a big rash. Yeah, I haven't had it ever since. So
that story should be on I love that story on my website. That is a beautiful tale. And so many of these tales they're just incredible.
And I didn't know anything about hypnosis really yet at all. I was just barely getting started, and I had run across cell command therapy. What is his name? All of a sudden, the name is
Martin,
escaping.
I think was it Martin, I believe.
Yes, Ed R.
Yeah,
Martin. Ed R. Martin. Yeah.
Ed Martin, that's it. Yeah.
Mhm. And I had run across it through another instructor, but then I discovered that he was the originator. And so I started looking at his stuff. And that's what I did. I just did, except in my case, it wasn't a command because I'm rebellious. I figured my cells might be too. So I did more like cell invitation instead of self
Cell invitation is the way you do it properly. That's the
Because if
proper way
I
to do it.
command myself to do anything, there's a very, very strong chance I will not do it. So anyway.
Exactly.
But that's my story of self-healing. And I've used it for a lot of stuff other since then. But that was also, you guys were all talking about the importance of the convincer, right? If you see a little bit of healing take place, then that convinces you that it's possible for a little while, right? And so seeing that was important. So Beryl, thank you so much for your story about your arm. And I am excited to read. You have a book out that I have not yet read that I want to read, the Hypnodontics one, but I think you have a few now, right? I wanted to go ahead and get like a little promo for everybody before we. There it is. Yes. Thank you. I am definitely going to pick that up because you know what? I am one of those hypnotists that you were talking about. I didn't realize it was such a vast field. There's so much more to it than just phobias.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. So thank you. You've opened my eyes today as well.
And most dentists are about preventative medicine, and they're very open to hypnosis.
Unlike maybe some other people in the medical.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
I'll be doing an online class later in the year. Yeah.
well, I may end up
I'm
signing up for
teaching
that.
20
so thank you.
dentists here in Spain in September. Oh. Yeah.
There was a question about tinnitus, and I was going to say that
Oh,
sometimes
I didn't
having
see
them,
that. Thank you.
just having them imagine that they have a cream full of healing crystals that's coating every part of the inner ear, that the inner ear, think of it as grass, is, the hearing cells have like grass is growing, you've got this, but also it can be in the brain. So you imagine this healing crystals going all along the nerve to the brain, and the section of the brain that hears is being soothed and relaxed and allowed to sleep. And sometimes it seems to be more in the brain rather than the physical ear.
I had a slightly different approach really quick, and then I'll let you answer, David, because I just think it's funny and it might not work for anybody other than me, but I was getting some tinnitus for a little while. And then I read, I don't remember where or who said it, but I read somewhere that when you have a ringing in your right ear, it is your higher consciousness talking to you. And when it's in your left ear, it's your guides. So as soon as I would get it, I would lean in and I'd be like, louder, make it louder. I want to hear what you're saying. And I'm leaning into it. And then because I'm leaning into it and really wanting to hear it, it would just go away.
Yes, that was the one I was going to mention, Kryssa.
Really?
It's what works every time. Whenever I get a bit of tinnitus, instead of trying to avoid it or be annoyed with it and get rid of it, I just say, please, what are you trying to communicate? Tell it. And then what will often happen is I'll get an insight about what's going on in my life. It's as if one of my guides was trying to reach through that ringing that alarm in my ear. And it's Chris, that's exactly how it works. Listening in closely rather than trying to push it away.
Yeah, and it goes away just by trying to hear it louder.
And then it goes away because you've heard the message, right? I mean, when your alarm bell is ringing, the thing to do is to wake up and turn it off and be awake, rather than try to take medicine to make the fucking alarm go away. Listen to its message. Beautiful, Kryssa. That's exact. Now,
I don't know. So you've had success with this with other people. I've only done it with myself, but I'm glad to hear that.
But it works for everybody. It works for everybody. It's a standard technique that I teach in my training, in my somatic healing class.
Well, there we go.
And there we go. Now, in terms of my own book, The Alchemy of Healing, I don't have a copy with me to show you all right now, which is a shame.
I'll type it in
the
here.
Alchemy of Healing book is available online, both as in download, and you can also order it online through our website. And it's also available on Amazon. But The Alchemy of Healing is an encyclopedia, including a section on how to restore healing to the ears. as well as dentistry. So it has all these, just page after page, and of course, much of it's on my website, but ordering the book will give you a real encyclopedic collection. Oh, I'm glad you're looking for your
Thanks.
copy, Beryl. If you can find
Oh,
that'd
and
be a
Beryl,
thrill.
yes, the broken heart cure. That was the other one I was trying to remember. So thank you
yeah,
so much.
let's see
Did
your
just
other book, Beryl.
receive, I got the email about that not too long ago. The broken heart cure with videos, yes, at berylcomar.com. And then Dorothy, if you have anything that you would like to promote, you can tell us now, or you can pop it into the Facebook group underneath this video. Same with you, David, as you know.
Thank you. Sure enough.
Yeah. And Beryl. So thank you so much, everyone. This was absolutely
Oh.
lovely. I really enjoyed our monthly mastermind squad. And as always, there is a little, I will post it over here, a little link to donate $2 if you want to just help offset the time and the organization and everything that goes
Well,
into these.
I'm a regular member, and I
You
recommend
are.
that.
Thank you.
To
I
join
appreciate that.
and give every month. That's kind of the way I think it needs to work. We need to support
Yeah,
Kryssa and the work that she is doing, in my opinion.
It's $2, man. It's like half,
right.
a quarter of a cup of Starbucks, right?
It isn't even a Starbucks. No shit, really.
Anyway, thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
Dorothy, and thank you everyone who showed up. Thank you, Lily, for the lovely questions. Thank you, Agnes, Faith, Grace. Also, thank you so much for jumping in. And yeah, George, it's nice to see you again. I'm sorry we didn't hear from you today because I do love your voice. So if you'll just say goodbye, that would make me really happy.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Now I got to get back to that other phone call.
Hold on, I got to hear George.
Y'all have a good day.
Yes.
Oh,
Isn't that the
bye-bye.
greatest voice ever? Yeah.
It is.
I'm gonna have
It
to
is.
have you do my next hypnosis healing audio, for me. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful
you.
rest of your couple of weeks, and we'll see you with the guest host spotlight in just a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Much.